He is Jim Cook, but we call him Cookie. I've known Cookie since high school. And actually, he started out in my sister's family as a good friend of her son. And he has become part of our family, so he is actually my nephew. So I would like to introduce Jim Cook. He's going to be our speaker, and he's going to tell you his story about his life and how DBGR has impacted him. Please welcome Jim.
First off, I'd like to thank all of you for coming and for your continued support of such a wonderful organization. It's helped countless children, and I'm one of them that can say that I gained a lot from my time at the ranch, and I'm very thankful for everything I learned. My life journey began on May 14th, 1976 in Brunswick, Georgia. My father was an 18-year-old high school dropout who was in no way, shape, or form ready for the task he was about to take on, which was raising a family. Unfortunately, my mother, a 17-year-old high school dropout herself, was also not prepared for this task, but they decided to throw caution to the wind and gave it a go. It only took 2 years for my mother, who also gave birth to my brother by then, to decide that she wasn't up for the challenge and go her separate ways. The problem with that decision was my father was in the military at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, trying to make the best future for us possible with minimal means. I was told that Child Protective Services came to our aid after a family friend came to our home and found my brother and I alone in a filthy apartment with nothing to eat. I'm not sure how long we had been left alone, but I am thankful for whoever it was that saved us that day. They would be the first of many people in my life to actually save me. After a small stay at a local foster home with my brother, my father received an emergency discharge from the military and came to pick us up. We continued to live in North Carolina until I was 5, and that's when my dad met the woman that would change our lives forever, his girlfriend Sheila. I only have flashbulb memories of this time in North Carolina, but those memories were comprised of evenings of parties, domestic disputes between my dad and his girlfriend, among other things. I do remember one evening when my dad had some friends over and they were all smoking marijuana with my brother and I in the same room. The appalling thing was I was in charge of bringing the marijuana cigarette from one end of the room to the other to his friend. I sure did look up to my dad at that time, though, even with all these negative things. I can remember how much I thought he loved us and was convinced that no matter what, he would make everything work out in the end. That's one credit I will give him. He did seem to have our best interest in mind and wanted to succeed in his fatherhood role. After a few years, his girlfriend decided to move back to her parents' home in North Dakota, and it didn't take long for my dad and myself and my brother to pack up a small U-Haul and drive all the way from North Carolina to North Dakota to follow his woman. It seemed we were moving. Following a brief stint with Sheila's parents, we all moved to a trailer court a few miles away. It seemed we were moving every other month or so, which more than likely is because of my father's inability to hold a steady job long enough with the work skills that he had. And to say it was a constant financial struggle would be a major understatement. Our Christmases were usually provided by bags of clothing and gifts from the Salvation Army, which to this day is the main charity that I give every year, because they played a major role in just giving our family a Christmas when my father couldn't provide that for us. And I think that's an important part for children, as we all probably do. After a couple more kids were born and our family continued to grow, the turmoil between Sheila and my brother and I began to be a daily issue. There were plenty of times when I was spanked or beaten with whatever was within reach, and many times I wasn't guilty of anything more than a kid being a kid. My lack of, if not physical abuse, there was constant verbal abuse. My lack of self-esteem to this day, in my opinion, is attributed to those days. This is something that I've learned to cope with, but now I realize that I struggle with it almost daily. By the time I was 9, I had already been kicked out of the house twice by his girlfriend, but my dad was told that I ran away, which to Sheila's pleasure made my dad furious with me. I think the whole plan she had all along was for my brother and I to be out of the picture since we weren't her blood children, and maybe that would somehow make their burden less as parents and make their life easier with less struggle. The last time I was kicked out, or ran away as she put it, I was picked up by the local police as I was just walking in a town about 10 miles away, just aimlessly walking, not really knowing what to do. When the police returned me to my father, he said that he had to decide whether or not to send me to a detention facility. Mind you, I was only 9, and a 9-year-old really has no place in a detention facility no matter what the case, in my opinion. But with Sheila in the background saying, do what you know is right, he decided to send me away. What a devastating blow that was. My only ally in this world at the time was no longer on my side. I literally had no one to turn to. I don't remember how long I was in a detention facility, but it was less than a month. But I do remember having a 15-year-old roommate, and he looked at me and told me that there's no reason a kid my age should be in detention. For he had stolen a car and attacked the arresting officer and beat him pretty badly. So if you can imagine, I really did have no place amongst these other people. So Lorraine and Bob Broughton were the first family that I got to go to as a foster kid. Now, I was with them for about a year, and they were in their 60s, and they just decided that they were ready to retire from their everyday job and that they were going to no longer be foster parents. So it was time for me to find another way. So the county foster care program decided that I should try to go back home and see if we could make everything work out, and then they would be free, I guess, of my issues. So I went back home against my wanting. I didn't really have a choice at that time, but I went back, and I wasn't there very long, and Sheila and I had an argument, and it was a long time ago. I have no idea what it was really about, but it was a small thing, and she again kicked me out until my dad returned home for the day. I was waiting in a cornfield near the house, and not knowing what was going to happen when my father returned, because I just didn't know exactly what he was going to be told or what he was going to think. So when he returned, his girlfriend told him that we got in an argument, and she slapped me as a disciplinary measure, and I returned with punching her in the stomach. And at this time she was pregnant, so as you can imagine, upon my dad hearing this, he was furious. And I understand if that was the case, rightfully so, but that was so far from the truth. So, in return, I was challenged to a fist fight with my father in the living room. And he said he was going to teach me what it was like to fight a real man. Now remember, I was only 12, and by no means was I a match to a grown man. After this, I was told to go into the basement and sit on the couch and not come upstairs until he told me to. And I was definitely not allowed to go to sleep. So I'm pretty sure I didn't stay awake the whole time, but he never came down to get me. Instead, the night passed and the morning came, and Sheila came down to get me and told me to come with her because we were taking me back to the detention facility. Once we got to the detention hall, all of the workers were at lunch, and we were told to wait into the lobby until they returned from their lunch break. After sitting in this waiting room for about 5 minutes, Sheila got up and started to walk to the door. And as a kid, I walked up and followed her to the door, and she turned around and asked me where I was going. And I said, obviously I'm going with you. And she said, your dad told me that if you are there when he returns from work, he's going to kill you. So it's my job to make sure that you don't return with us. So I'm 12. Devastated. I really didn't know what to do, so I went into the bathroom stall and began to cry. I was in there for a while, and a gentleman came in and asked me what was wrong, and that's when I met Mary Hall, who was one of the other people that was huge in taking me away from my bad family, I guess is the way to put it, and put me into a different foster home. That Mary Hall got it started for me to get into the Casey Family Program, which is a wonderful organization that deals with foster kids and place them into good homes, and they actually screen the foster parents so they don't just, throw them in. I mean, as being in the system as I was, I've seen there are foster parents that are great people and are doing it for the love of helping children, but there are also people that are just doing foster care for a different source of income, and that doesn't really mix when you're trying to get a child help that he needs. If you're doing it for a job as income, you may not give the care and love that the kid needs to succeed. So it took me 6 months to get actually accepted into the foster care program. And while I was in that waiting period, I was put into another county foster home. And they were really great people, Jewel and Roger Hyenga. They probably, out of all the foster homes that I've been in, they were my favorite. And I would have been fine living with them. But as chance would have it, they were not a Casey Family Program home. So I had to go to the Casey Program home and not with them because they were just with the county. So I stayed with them for about 6 months, and then I was placed in another Casey Family Program home, which Kim and Larry Buck, they lived in Dickinson, North Dakota, and I was there probably 6 months, and then all of my issues from the past started surfacing. Like I had problems with petty theft and not being honest, and just probably a lot of things that kids my age were getting into, and maybe not as severe, but I was definitely having issues with my past and little abandonment issues and things along the way that just kept popping up. So one summer I was outside and in the camper and was playing with matches, and I was pretty sure that they were all out when I left, but obviously they weren't because the camper started on fire. So when I was in the house, my neighbor came over and said, your camper's on fire, you guys should go look into it. So luckily he caught it fast enough that there wasn't devastating damage. But the devastating thing that I did was ruin trust with my foster parents because they never recovered from that incident. And it didn't take long that I was asked to leave their home as well because of the fire pyromania issues. So I went to a group home to stay, and it was more of a structured living compared to a foster home where you're kind of free to do whatever you please. And I was at the Independence group home for just over a year, and Kim and Larry Buck had made up the decision that I would no longer be in their home. So my foster care program decided to start the process of finding me another home to live in. Because at this time I was about 15 and in an important part of schooling where I needed to graduate and get everything taken care of for my future after school. So I ended up meeting two parents, Larry and Esther Lensing. And they lived in a really small town compared to what I was used to, which didn't affect me in as many ways as I thought it was going to, but I was pretty scared to go and live in a small town where, it's just completely different from being in a big city and where there's just more to do. So for a while we seemed to hit it off, but the problem with Larry and Esther Lensing, besides my issues, were they had grandchildren that were the same age as me. So there was an age difference, and we never really met eye to eye on a lot of things, such as musical preference, my diet, extracurricular activities that I would partake in, like video games and things like that. So pretty much from the beginning, there was a little bit of ruffled feathers, I guess you could say. Now, for whatever reason, Mr. and Mrs. Lensing said they found sewing needles in their bedding that had been planted there, not like they just fell out of a box of sewing needles. So basically they were implying that I was in fact putting these around to sabotage them, to cause pain, or whatever it would end up doing. I'm 36 years old now, and honestly, I've never recovered from that blame because I had no part in that whole scenario, but it was the driving force that took me away from that community and that foster home. In Linton, I did actually enjoy where I was living. I was doing well in school, I was playing sports, everything was going well, but there was the constant issue at home. So one day, they decided that I needed to take a tour of the Dakota Boys Ranch. And I was mortified about the Boys Ranch because all you hear is it's an institution, and immediately you think of it's a prison type setting, there's people fighting, and it's just not somewhere that you want to go. Is if you're living and then all of a sudden you have to be in a structured setting, it's pretty scary for a teenager. So I went on this tour, and in the back of my mind I thought, well, I'm never going to be here, so it's not really a big deal. I'll check out the facilities and just play the game, so to speak, and go back to living my daily life. So the deal was, when I came back, they said if any more needle episodes were found, then the Dakota Boys Ranch would be my next stop. And lo and behold, now mind you, the last thing that I wanted to do was go to the Boys Ranch. And the last thing I would have done is sabotage my home life to put me back into the Boys Ranch. That's just not, it's unfathomable to me that I would have actually done that. So 2 weeks is all that passed, and magically another needle appeared. Now mind you, I had never seen the needles, anything. It was all just brought up and kind of made as this big issue that obviously it's a big issue if that's actually what's happening. But I never really, no one took my side because of my past, and I'm a foster kid going from home to home, had a bad upbringing. Honesty was never, I was never given an honest chance, in my opinion. So I ended up going to the Boys Ranch. Now, I was crying the whole way there just because of what I was about to get into, and I was really intimidated. I was really a soft-spoken young man, and I definitely didn't want to fit in with the Boys Ranch if I was gonna. I just didn't want any part of it. So I ended up going there anyway, and wasn't there. I probably was there 2 weeks, and I just realized that I wasn't gonna get out of there. So I might as well make the best of the situation and take the therapy that they were giving. I ended up being in the campus school for about 2 months, and it didn't take long before I met a person by the name of Joan Bonsness, who is the mother to Becky and Vicky, and she was the individual education planner. We met a few times a month to just kind of go over what my goals were, where I was sitting, how my progress was, and all that good stuff. And I don't know, from the beginning, you could just see the love of the job that this woman was doing. It wasn't like she was just doing it for a career. She really did love what she was doing, and she was going to make better people out of her job. And I could definitely give her credit. I'm one of those people. So after I had been in the campus school program a couple months, they decided that I should go to public school because there was a more advanced schooling there, and I would be better off in that setting. So I went to public school and would still continue to live at the Boys Ranch, which I think it was probably the best thing for me because I wasn't like a lot of the people that were at the Boys Ranch. I was really like a social guy, and I was in sports, and never had a problem making friends with anyone. It's just kind of how I was. Well, going to public school kind of kept me in that mindset, so where I wasn't so much in a structured institution type attitude. So that was a big bonus for me because I could still act almost to myself like I wasn't at the Boys Ranch. So when I'd come home at night, yes, there was groups and there was structure and there was rules, and there was always counselors and cottage coordinators making sure that you weren't slipping by the wayside and they were keeping you accountable for all of your actions, which is what a lot of teenagers need, is accountability for whatever they do. So I've been in public school and everything was going well. And after about a year and a half at the Boys Ranch, they decided that I could move on to the Transitional Living Program. Now, this is a program that allows us to live in our own apartment. It was actually a fourplex at the time, and I had a roommate, and there was a house parent upstairs who kind of was your backbone support system if you needed anything, but really it was independent living. You were learning skills that you're going to need once you're out of the ranch setting and when you're not supervised. So we did things like grocery shopping on minimal budgets and making sure you had your driver's license and all little things that are important as you move on in life, but you kind of forget that you need help doing those things to make it work. So the transitional living thing ended up being another great facility with the Boys Ranch because it gave you a chance to prepare for the inevitability, which is going to be you're on your own completely and you don't have a budget that the Boys Ranch has given you. You have a budget that is your money and you need to figure out how to make everything work and have money in the end to save or do other little things with. So they really wouldn't do much as far as be your parents, but if you needed anything as a parent role, they were there. Now, I'm going to backpedal just a little bit to explain my relationship with Dr. Joan Bonsness. I, of course, met her at the Boys Ranch on a professional level, but upon entering public school, I ended up meeting her grandson, Kyle Campbell, and we became best friends. Mainly, we were 2 lockers away from each other, so that was the convenient part, but we were just a lot alike and just became best friends. So after a while, I put 2 and 2 together and realized that my best friend was in fact the grandson of Joan Bonsness. Now, it would be through this relationship that I would be lucky enough to be invited over for Sunday dinners at Kyle's parents with Vicki and Rich, who isn't here today, but those family settings were unlike any other family that I've ever had. I mean, to this day, I'm lucky enough to call myself an honorary family member, and I can't tell you how fortunate I am to have these people in my life, because if nothing else, it gave me a sense of pride for who I am to make sure that they are proud of me. Because no matter what happens in life, I think everyone needs to have someone that's proud of them to make them succeed. If there's any problem in your life that you can't get through, you need to have someone to make proud of you. And they've been that, definitely they've been the people for me. Now, after several meetings with them, more and more family gatherings I attended, I was more or less accepted into their family, not as a ranch kid, but as an honorary family member, as I said before. And I'm so honored to have them as people I can rely on, and people, like I said, that I can make proud. That's the whole key to who I am today, is I've never had anyone to be scared of letting down until I met these people. And if not for the Boys Ranch and what they have provided and hiring Joan Bonsness, none of this would have happened. And it's unbelievable to me that I've been fortunate enough to have a road that was not very promising to come to where I am now. And I feel like I'm a successful man, and I'm very proud of who I am. And I look back on all the things that I've been through and kind of, I'm humbled. So I don't really think that I've done anything special, or but it's not all about me. It's about the support system. You, people like you, just giving and helping this foundation make people like me. And granted, every person that goes to the Boys Ranch maybe isn't successful in their journey, and that's sad to me, but I honestly agree that if one person out of 100, one child, can be saved, then it's a job that someone needs to do, and it's something that really needs to be, every state should have a Boys and Girls Ranch. And when I was there, it wasn't a Boys and Girls Ranch, it was just the Dakota Boys Ranch. So just in the 20 years since I've been there, it's amazing how much they've grown, and to think about it, how many people that they've helped just in 20 years that I've been associated with them. Now, Dr. Becky Oven and her husband Vern are two more people that I love and care deeply about. And I've been lucky enough to call them aunt and uncle for going on 20 years now. They're amazing people in their own right and have raised a wonderful family as well. And I thank Becky for getting me into this setting right here, because she was a part of getting me to speak in front of all of you. And like I said before, I might not seem to give all the praise to the Boys Ranch. I talk about Becky and Vicky, and they're a really big part of my life right now. But like I said, if Dr. Joan Bonsness wouldn't have been hired as education coordinator, then I don't know. I definitely wouldn't have these people in my life, and I don't know what I would be. I'm not saying that I would be a failure right now, but I honestly believe my quality of life and the person I am is definitely better having them here. And now I'm living in Seattle, Washington, and I've been there for 13 years. I have a great union career in masonry, and I enjoy the success that I have as much as the projects I'm part of in a really big city. And once again, it comes back to the pride that I have after accomplishing everything I have after going down the unpromising road. Fortunately, I've been blessed along the way with individuals who care about me and actually care about the job that they do. Without these critical elements in my life, I am not sure where I would be now, as I said before. Thank you, Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch. Please keep fighting the good fight, and there's plenty of people just like me who need you, and will really appreciate the assistance. That's all I have. Once again, thank you all.